Hello, today is Monday, July 1st, and welcome to episode 354 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI's founder and executive director, Jamil Jaffer. I'm joined today by NSI's deputy executive director, Jessica Jones, NSI senior fellow, Lester Munson, and NSI visiting fellow, Jeffrey Wells. This is our last episode before our summer break. We'll be going on a break after today's episode. However, you don't have to miss us that much because NSI's Cyber and Tech Center will be launching its new podcast, Control F, providing a deep dive into emerging technologies and dissecting the ever-evolving landscape of tech policy. So the first series of Control F, Fault Lines going on summer break, Control F will begin on Tuesday, July 9th. It'll be released every 2 weeks. It'll be a little bit longer than this podcast in the sense that it'll be 30 to 40 minutes. It'll give you a deep dive on some cool technologies, and it'll cover awesome game-changing technologies like generative AI, quantum computing, and cloud and edge computing. So just so you know, at the end of this episode, we'll be giving you another exclusive sneak peek on the first episode of Control F. It'll be on accelerated computing, and we'll have Dr. Eric Breckenfeld, the director of technology policy at NVIDIA, the hottest and apparently the most valuable company on the American stock market, and Gilman Louie, the former CEO of Incutel and now a partner at America's Frontier Fund, a venture capital firm in the DC area. So stay tuned till the end of this episode. But for now, we're back to Fault Lines, our quick hit podcast on the national security and foreign policy shaking of America. And today we're talking about elections. We've got elections going on in France for the National Assembly. Snap elections were called on June 9th by French President Emmanuel Macron after his party suffered a significant defeat in the European elections in favor of the National Rally, a coalition of conservative parties in France, led by Marine Le Pen, famous daughter of Jean-Marie Le Pen, the longtime raconteur of French politics, and her new candidate and her new protege, Jordan Bardella. So that's what's going on in France. We've got some elections going on there, but we also have elections going on in Iran as a reformist or ostensibly reformist candidate for president runs against an ultra-conservative. The reformist is Masoud Pezeshkian, and he is going up against Saeed Jalili, a conservative lawmaker who was also one of the key architects of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or also known as the Iran nuclear deal. So with those two elections going on and a movement across Europe to the right with Viktor Orban in Hungary, Claudia Meloni in Italy, we got to figure out what's going on with elections around the globe. So Les, I'm going to come to you first. What do you make of what's going on in the European elections? And talk to us about these Iranian elections, because we know at the end of the day, the Guardian Council decides who runs. They decide who's ultimately going to make it to the finals. We've got two candidates going up against one another. What do we make of what's happened in Iran and France? Les, over to you.
Well, in France, I don't think this result is any kind of a surprise for anyone who's been watching European politics, and God help you if you're a specialist in French politics. One of the thoughts was that Macron was calling an early election to give the National Rally a chance to run the government and prove to everyone that they're incompetent buffoons in his mind, and then his moderate group could make a comeback. That seems like a more rational explanation to me than that he thought by calling such quick elections after losing so badly in the European-wide ones that his party would somehow magically do well. We're also seeing similar kind of movement of change in the UK, across the English Channel there. So this is not very surprising.
So just to be clear, Les, your conspiracy theory is that, like no politician in the history of mankind, Emmanuel Macron called the election so he loses for the long-term play of trying to win again later.
Let us remember that they are French, and also that they have both a presidential
so he likes losing.
Well, evidently, or they haven't won in a very long time. Let's put it that way. And also, they have a presidential system and a prime minister system. So it's there's a head of state, head of government dichotomy here that we don't really have in our country. So I think the logic and the pneumatics of the whole political process are different than ours. In Iran, I remain skeptical. We talked about this a little bit before the podcast, that any of the numbers coming out of Iran are accurate. I suspect the vote totals are way lower than what they're saying. I don't really believe that we're looking at a hardliner versus a moderate. I think in Iran, under the rule of the mullahs, everyone is a hardliner. If you're a real moderate, you're not allowed to run. Let's remember that the Ayatollah gets to handpick who the candidates are. So this is not democracy in any sense of the word. Yes, people will run around and vote, and there are a couple of candidates, but this is a sham. It's always been a sham in Iran, and we shouldn't kid ourselves into thinking that there's going to be some sort of moderate government in Tehran anytime soon.
So, Jess, I see you shaking your head over there, not with respect to Iran, but with respect to France. And I mean, let's just make this point that, Macron's still going to be in office. So what do you make of all this?
A lot of news articles, to less is conspiracy that this is Macron's play to get the national rally to get in power to basically foul up the government and piss off people. The same conspiracy is being said in a lot of articles about the Iranian elections, that conservatives are going to win so that you have more massive protests and change in Iran. That seems, to your point, to me, a little too complicated for us humans to actually plan out and do. So I'm skeptical. I think Macron, unfortunately, was surprised that his party didn't do better and actually came in third place. I think he overplayed his hands. I think he thought that they would actually do better. And to your point, Les, that they have both the presidency and a prime minister. You actually, usually national security and foreign policy is within the scope of the president. Macron is still in power for a few more years. I think he relied back and thought he could sit back on that. But unfortunately, you've got Le Pen saying, actually, we're going to claw back some of that power, the kind of autonomy you have when it comes to policy in support of Ukraine. That's not going to be there anymore, whether it's missiles that can hit inside Russia, whether it's military trainers being sent there. No, that's not going to happen when we're in power, when we, take over the prime ministership. So I think.
So Jones, to be clear, the national rally position is the same as the Biden administration.
Well,
on Ukraine.
I'm not sure that's right.
Oh, it's just very similar. Is it very
Jeffrey,
similar, or is it exactly the same?
Well, so let's talk about that, Jeffrey. So, what do you make of this? Will this election in France have an impact on the Ukraine war? And will the election in Iran have an effect on the Israel-Hamas conflict and or Iran's bad behavior in the region? Or do neither of these things really matter? As Les would tell you, the national rally is in the same place as the Biden administration, a little in, a little out, and Macron's fully in, so it doesn't really matter. And in Iran, they're just going to keep doing what they do. Is that right?
I do agree with Les. I'm not so sure I agree with the conspiracy theory, although, choosing a snap election within 3 weeks certainly was a bold move. And, I don't know that yesterday's results show that this was a protest vote for Le Pen and the right. I think the Rassemblement, the Nationals, they're Eurosceptic, they're anti-immigration. Wow. They're also, very anti-European. European Union, and they're not so excited about the support for Ukraine. And I think that the dynamics, should they win, certainly are going to change across the continent and create additional discord. I think the potential for a weakened EU could lead to significant results in just our global power dynamics as a whole, and certainly in the Ukrainian piece. I think in Iran, as you said, it's a choice between hardline or hardline, but one just slightly less hardliner. Pezeshkian, may bring with him a little more openness to re-engage with the West to discuss sanctions, relief, and a nuclear program. And I think if Jalili wins, that demonstrates that the mullahs, want to continue the hardline stance, want to continue creating discord throughout the Middle East. And, we'll see increased, or stricter social controls, if Jalili wins, increased hostility towards Western powers, which will only, continue to exacerbate regional instability, continue to provide support for both the Houthis and Hezbollah. That I think though both outcomes, certainly, both in France as well as in Iran, are going to have unique implications that we're all going to have to deal with in some way, shape, or another. And certainly whatever administration is here in the United States is going to have to really clearly define its plan for the next 4 or 5 years on how to deal with both.
Well, what's great about that is that at least we have two amazing, young, dynamic candidates running for office in the United States that can define their plan and have a strong foreign policy for the country. Folks, that's a wrap. Thanks so much to Devlin Burney, Claude Jennings, the NSI staff for the help in producing today's episode. We'll be going on summer break, and we'll be back in the fall. This is our last episode, folks. So join us then in the fall for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart, fast on the national security and foreign policy shaking up America. But in the meantime, check out our new exclusive sneak peek of the first episode of the Control F podcast.
The U.S. industrial policy is you nurture something either when it's in an early state or when there are these marginal moments where we know there's a lot of global capacity that's going to be stood up over the next 10 years. Can we make investments on the margins to encourage that as much as possible to be in the U.S., right? Not that we have to do that always, because the end state, just as Gilman said, is how do you end up with companies who can be competitive on the global stage and not need constant injections of cash, right? Yeah. That's the end state. And I think that's what's different about industrial policy that works for the U.S. and is compatible with our system versus how it's done elsewhere.
And again, remember, be sure to tune in for the official launch of the Control F podcast on Tuesday, July 9th. It's going to be every 2 weeks, talking about game-changing technologies. You can subscribe to the Control F podcast on Apple's Podcasts, Spotify, or on YouTube. Check out our videos for both that podcast and Fault Lines, and have a great summer. See you in September.